this is Dan. Going to give a shout out this week to Max Grant all the way down in Perth, Australia. I've been watching Max for several weeks now, and I got to tell you, I'm impressed and entertained every time I stop by. He gets it done with what he got, and that's nice English, Dan. With what he has, and is very impressive and very clever. A lot of innovative ways of getting something done, and as I mentioned, with what he's got. So if you get a chance, stop by and check out Max. Hi, this is Dan, House of Broken Dobbs Things. I'm just goofing off tonight. My wife is at her CrossFit class, so I brought in this little Atlas chuck that I had cleaned up. I'm going to share it with you and have a quick discussion around something. The little chuck is quite old, but it was quite nasty. I didn't do it before picture because, frankly, everybody has seen a rusty chuck before. But I want you to look at what I've got now. This was a combination of hot soapy water, cleaning the grunge off of it, and then consequently we went ahead and do the cleanup, and we went ahead and did the evaporust. If you notice on that, it's looking pretty darn good. This was completely covered in rust, and after the evaporust, gave it just a couple of strokes with a green Scotch-Brite pad, and if you can see that or not, that cleaned it up really nice. This is an Atlas model BB435. Get some additional light on that one for you. See if you can read that. Made in the USA, Chuck. Cleaned up really nice. You can look around the outside edges here, and it was in the typical form: gummy, gooey, dried grease just from I don't know when, and it was quite a sight. We cleaned up single little pinion right here, and it cleaned up very nicely with minimal effort. So once again, I'm not avert to using hot soapy water, getting the gunk off of it, and then hitting it with the evaporust to be pretty much all environmentally sound. But first I wanted to talk to you briefly, and I know everybody has seen a chuck built before. No problem. I've seen it done too. And lots of good reviews going through all of that, but Mr. Pete did exceptionally good ones over the years. But for those that may have accidentally been like myself and just bumped into this kind of hobby, I wanted to talk about the main components. The scroll and the pinion drives the scroll, which moves the jaws in and out to clamp your part. Okay? One of the things we don't talk about a lot is how to reassemble one. Okay, they've all covered that, but I wanted to slow it down just a smidge to highlight some of those parts of what's going on. So each of the jaws may be difficult to see. Probably see on the tip there that there is a 2, and then there is a 1, and then there is a 3. Well, in addition to that, on the surface, there's a 1, a 2, and a 3 again. That has everything in the world to do with getting this together properly. If you don't follow that methodology of doing chuck number 1 in first, and then chuck number 2, and so on and so forth, you're going to spend a long time cranking this thing closed to find out that it's not quite right. So what I wanted to talk about was the scroll. So in this, you can probably see right here, my gloves are all nasty now. I was out working on the Volvo before this. But on here you'll see this spot right here. This is the tip of the scroll. This is extremely important to you as you're putting this together. Because as you have chuck number 3, chuck number 2, and chuck number 1, number 1 is going to have to start with this area first as you run the scroll in. Because you stack these together, they are not identical. If you'll notice, I've got them squared off so they should be hitting off, but notice the transition down. 1, 2, and 3. They have to go in the right sequence. If they don't, well, then you're just kind of up the creek without a poodle. So, what happens is you set these on here, as you're cranking this all around, you'll have jaw number 1, and we'll go through this. Jaw number 1 will be preloaded, ready to go. Hopefully this fits nicer than when I took it apart. Oh yes, much nicer. Snug, but not gummed and where it won't move. Oh yes, that's lots better. This is going to really work well. So as the scroll is coming around here, you're going to be inserting jaw number 1, and it's going to catch that tooth in jaw number 1, and it's going to start the timing. This thing is timed, just like an engine. It's timed to do what it needs to do, because at the end of the day, all 3 of these jaws have to come together at exactly the same point in time. So that's what I wanted to cover, just a little bit on that. If these don't come together at exactly the same time, it's not going to grip right, and it's going to be a real mess. So the chuck is all apart. There was absolutely no special tools required. It required a decent sized screwdriver. These will ultimately get replaced. Flathead screws nowadays, this is going to have hex screws in it before I'm done with it. And on the inside, there's no special tricks or anything like that. This is a 1.5/8, I believe, is the standard for a South Bend. It may be a 6, I have to count it, but anyway, that's the standard right here. So I'll go through the assembly. I'm going to get a little bit better light going here. I think you can see pretty well, but we'll get there. But I wanted to talk about the jaws again. They have to go in sequence, and they have to go in the right order. So give me just a couple of minutes, and I'll get some more light out here. Okay, I think that's a little better light. I'm sorry for the initial, but I normally don't shoot out here on the desk. But based on the fact that I had the little camera sitting here, I was going to try shooting it from this and keeping it off the tripod. Excuse me, and hope you can actually see it, what we're dealing with. Okay, yeah, my computer desk is also messy as well, so that's okay. I think anybody that's tuned into my channel is already well aware of my proclivities. So, the scroll is also the toothed element as well, and I am going to borrow from Lance and Patrick once again, and I'm going to use the grease that they use. Okay, the pinion, small guy that he is, rides in the center housing right there, and sits inside the housing, and actually pilots right here. It floats in between the two halves, but to get the ball rolling here, a lot of folks will be screaming out loud right about now saying, "Oh my God, what's he doing?" Well, I'm adding a little bit of this Magnalube G, an ever so small amount, to the rotating surfaces. Now, when this is all together, this surface here is pretty much encapsulated. It's not much going to be going on inside of there. Right like that. Right like that. Okay. Ever so small amount. Not so much to be a gooey, greasy mess, but enough to provide lubrication on the surfaces. Alright. And from there, I'm also going to take the scroll, which drops down inside, and there's only thing in here right now is some fluid film. As you all know, I like that stuff to keep things from getting gooey and rusty and whatnot. So I'm going to also add ever so small an amount for an assembly lube. It is on with a paintbrush, probably hardly enough for you to even notice. Just provide a dusting film to sit there on that wear surface. So if you're, "Oh my God, I would never do that to my chuck." Oh, okay. Don't do that to your chuck. But for what I've been watching and learning, this stuff does a really, really nice job of staying put. And being that this housing assembly is fairly much sealed up when it's together, I'm going to go ahead and add it to the surfaces. Okay. Okay. So in there, gives it a nice feel. I don't think I'm going to have a ton of effort because this housing, when it sits down on top of here, the only input you're going to get is really coming through the spindle threads, and that's not going to happen much. And at the same time, also coming around this. So I'm not that worried about it. Okay. The opposite side, speaking of which, is going to be the side that's going to be facing the chip generating inferno. Sorry, Patrick, I don't have a syringe to install this. So I'm putting ever so small amount just to film it. Not really leave grease on here. But this stuff, I've grown to like it a great deal. It's Magnalube G. Pound can from McMaster Carr was not very expensive. You can buy it in smaller quantities, but the price goes up quite a bit, actually. So, as you're setting that together, very nice machine fit. It's going to require just a little bit of getting it straight. Now, you probably notice right here that parting line is very precise. Okay, so for now I said I'm going to replace these screws with hex bolts ultimately, so I'm not going to apply any Loctite at this time. And this is going into stock. I'm not using it today or anything, but definitely like. Ooh, wrong screwdriver. I grabbed one. I grabbed the wrong one, so I'll get these down somewhat snug. Just barely snug. There we go. I think that one had been mushed a little bit. Screwdriver went in one and not the other. Okay. Before we get too far carried along, let's make sure that Mercury didn't visit. Oh, feels very nice. It's nice and snug, ready to go. Okay. I'm going to put this where you can see it. I'm sorry for the lighting right here. Stay out of the light, Dan. Alright, I want you to watch this come around. And it should be coming up anytime now. There it is. Okay. I'm going to zoom in there and we're going to provide some more auxiliary light. Alright. This is where the whole thing starts, right here. Look how nice that moves. But as this comes around, this is the one that's going to have to be timed in with the number 1. Alright, so as I insert the number 1, it's going to pick up that edge, and it's going to be timed properly. Okay, so when you put these in, you need to put a little bit of pressure on it, just to hold it in. Come on now. Back up. Back up. There we go. Went too fast. Bring it in. You may have to jiggle it a little bit. Get the first tooth. I should go out to the garage and grab a chuck key. I know. Okay. Get all the way out. Okay. Okay. Chuck's going in. Yeah, it's a little bit easier angle for me. Okay. That's locked in. Now we are bringing it up for number 2. Should be able to see that. So the number 2 is coming right up. You see it transitioning there? So now, take the number 2 jaw. Number 1's locked in. I shouldn't have to worry about it anymore. This is the first time for number 2 to come in. It's interesting. What happened? We have a straggler. Okay. Number 2 is coming in. And then 2 should be locked in. Oops, sorry. 2 should be locked in. Ooh. Coming around. And ready to time in number 3. I didn't put any grease on these, so everybody can stand down and relax. The Chuck grease Nazis need not apply. Okay, now, the ultimate test to Dan's idiocy here is if everything is right. If everything's right, they should come together and close at the appropriate time. Yeah, it wouldn't hardly turn and come apart when I had it out in the shop. It's filthy, dirty, generally abused, but very nice condition underneath all of that. Okay, if everything goes right, and it's not known to happen with my house, they should come together in somewhat of a uniform closure. Ta-da! Well, and accidents never cease. You can tell that there are areas of the chuck that have been used much, and there's those that have not been used all that much.